the current Bitcoin crash could get a lot worse. We're currently seeing that the yield curve has inverted again right at this moment. In the past, that has always been a clear indicator of a recession. We also see that the betting markets have significantly revised down their price forecasts for 2025. And we also have one of the biggest hedge fund managers in the world, Steve Cohen, talking about a recession, a tough economic situation that's coming our way. And he even says that the markets have already seen their highs. On the other hand, there are also glimmers of hope, because CSAT is making a new massive prediction. He has already correctly called the current crash, here the crash from 101,000 to 85,000 US dollar. And now he expects that the next price target for Bitcoin is the $1 million mark. So, we're looking at a pullback, we'll recover, and then aim for that 1 million mark next. The Kobe C letter has put together a pretty good summary of what's going on in the current market. First, stocks are falling as if the trade war is officially back. Secondly, the US dollar is dropping as if the trade war is over. Thirdly, crypto is falling as if the bear market has just begun. Fourth, the yields on US Treasury bonds are dropping as if there are going to be interest rate cuts again. Fifth, oil prices are falling, as if we were entering a recession. And sixth, the gold price is falling, as if we're heading for a soft landing. So, what's happening in the market right now is absolutely massive, not just with Bitcoin, but across the financial markets in general. A whole lot of tech stocks have taken a massive hit. And we're also going to take a look at what's going on with the yield curve, specifically the inverted yield curve, why this is so incredibly important, and how it has always been a clear indicator of a recession in the past. And that Bitcoin could definitely be dragged down as well if we drift into a recession. A lot of people have been thinking for a while now that a recession is unnecessary. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at the current betting markets and how they assess the Bitcoin price. It is said here that price prediction markets no longer expect a Bitcoin price of $150,000 in 2025. The markets currently expect that the Bitcoin price will rise to $124,000 in the base scenario by 2025, which is a drop of $25,000 since January. So, back then we saw, and you can see it clearly in the chart, how the market was very, very bullish back in January. Here, we're talking about a price of $150,000, and now it's dropped rapidly down. It's been slowly dropping more and more over the last few days. And here you can see now, after the massive drop, it has fallen down to $125,000. That means the betting markets are also turning now and are much, much more bearish. Also, in general, the fear and greed index is very, very set to fear. And, overall, the mood is just really, really bad right now. But we've seen, in the past, that the mood can turn around really quickly. So, then something happens, and suddenly everything is bullish again. So, we really need to keep a close eye on this. I'm not being super bearish here either. Sure, it could drop another $10,000 or something like that. But I still don't see a bear market here. And in the long run, I still see all the bullish signs for Bitcoin. These are just short-term or medium-term things. There are dangerous things coming our way, but in the long run, you still have to be hyper-bullish about it. And now we really need to take a look at this chart. This is really one of the most important charts when it comes to general financial markets. And here we see on one side the 3-month US Treasury bonds, so short-term government bonds, and on the other side the 10-year Treasury bonds, which are basically shown here at the long end. The US yield curve for 3 months for 10-year bonds. It's on the verge of another invasion. And that was yesterday afternoon or last night for you all. And now we've actually just seen that a few minutes or hours ago, the yield curve has actually turned. We're facing another invasion. And invasions have already preceded recessions in the 2000s and more recently during the recession in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. And now the big question is whether the US is heading into a major recession. And you can clearly see it in this chart. Here you can see the 2000s, the early 2000s. Then you see the inverted yield curve. After that, the dot-com bubble burst. Then we see the next inverted yield curve here in 07, so 2007, and it actually started a bit in 2006. Then we see the massive global financial crash in 2008. And then we see what's next here. 2019, 2020, investors, yield curve, then Corona. And now we had something really interesting. In 2023, 2024 we had the inverted yield curve here, but we didn't have a crash. And that's why many are saying now, okay, the crash is long overdue. Okay, some say we might have had mini crashes or something like that, but of course, nothing like a global financial crisis or anything. And many are saying now, okay, the crash is overdue. And then we have recovered again here. Now the inversion has basically inverted back. That means we no longer had an inverted yield curve. And now let's take a look. It went up from here. There we can already see the little peak. But now, it just went back down a little while ago. Actually just a few hours ago. It has all turned around. Yeah, I can see it right here. Now I've mixed everything up. Here. Now you can't see anything anymore. Wait, now you can see it again. It's tricky here with the chart. Okay, now you can see it again. So, and now we see that it has inverted again here. And a whole lot of those classic investors really place a lot of importance on the inverted yield curve. Does that mean the recession is coming tomorrow? No, it doesn't mean that. Does that mean it could happen in the near future? Yeah, that can definitely happen. But it could also be that nothing happens here. That means just because it has always been that way in the past, it doesn't automatically mean it will be the same in the future. A lot of people also say, for example, that it doesn't work anymore right now. With the investors, that's an old metric. You can't use it the same way you used to. Back then, the financial markets weren't so inflated. In the meantime, the financial markets are much more inflated, and so on. So, I have no idea if this is a metric you can trust or if you can't trust it. Historically speaking, it was very, very good. But now, in the last inversion, the graph didn't match up here. That means we should have actually seen a recession. We still haven't been in a recession. Now some are saying, okay, that's been pushed back a bit, but the recession will definitely come this year. And if that happens, then Bitcoin will definitely get dragged down with it. Feel free to write in the comments if you think we'll see a recession this year, and whether Bitcoin will get dragged down with it. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense for Bitcoin to get dragged down, but the big factor here could be that it's a massive buying opportunity. Because Bitcoin is likely to recover here much faster than, say, the traditional financial markets or classic financial markets. We can probably assume that this is indeed the case, and that's why this could also be a massive buying opportunity. So, in the short term, no one can really say where it's headed, whether we're going to fall further or if we're going to make a rebound back up. In the medium term, it could be that the recession is coming. When the recession comes, we can safely assume that Bitcoin will correct downwards. But it looks positive. In the long term, we can definitely assume that the Bitcoin price will continue to rise because nothing has changed in the fundamentals. But we have to acknowledge that Bitcoin is not an uncorrelated asset and is linked to the traditional financial markets. And when the traditional financial markets are falling, when there are simply problems in the traditional financial markets, like with Donald Trump's tariffs and uncertainty in the market, if people are leaning towards safer assets and not into risky ones, then Bitcoin has a really big problem here. And I already said this in the last video. We haven't seen any real QE or anything like that, such massive stimulation packages. And in the past, we've seen that Bitcoin has performed really well, especially once the massive stimulus kicked in. As soon as the quantitative easing starts, as soon as interest rates drop to near zero and all that. And I would say, there is definitely pressure on the central banks, including in the US, to lower interest rates, because a lot of debt securities need to be refinanced this year. And so, it definitely makes sense to lower the interest rates even further. On the other hand, there's inflation, which is back. Jerome Powell clearly says no, he doesn't want to lower interest rates. Donald Trump says he wants to lower interest rates. The Department of Government Efficiency is also working hard to bring down the 10-year Treasury bonds. You can really struggle to control short-term government bonds. That's definitely interesting. And now we actually have Steve Cohen, one of the biggest hedge fund manager in the world, who is currently very bearish. He says here, the highs for this year are definitely already in. Check out what he has to say and his market assessment.
The rate is actually going to go down, which because of slowing labor force. And so, I mean, there may be offsets in Doge, and that needs to be considered. But the reality is you've got a brew of sticky inflation, slowing growth, and austerity in the government. And so I'm actually pretty negative for the first time in a while. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, but I do think, given where investors lay, how committed they are to the markets today, that I think we're seeing a regime shift a little bit. And it may only last a year or so, but it's definitely a period where I think the best gains have been had, and wouldn't surprise me to see a significant correction.
So, he clearly says that he's currently feeling bearish. The highs for this year are definitely already in. But he says there won't be a disaster coming our way. Instead, there will be corrections because inflation is sticky, so inflation is still very much present. That's why you can't really bring down interest rates. On the other hand, the economy isn't really booming. There are certain problems. There are also certain problems in the government, which he points out here. And also very interesting is, I saw a clip of Donald Trump earlier. It's like 2 weeks old or so. He also mentions the current policies and what he's doing with all the tariffs. And so, he also mentioned that it can definitely lead to some pain in the short term because it can trigger turbulence. Also, when so many jobs are being cut, when the Department of Government Efficiency is making so many drastic cuts, and when a lot of uncertainty comes into the market because of the tariffs, it can really lead to a lot of pain in the economy in the short term. But in the long run, all of this is good for the US, for the US dollar. And that can then lead to the economy being strengthened again. I mean, we always have to look at what's happening in the US when it comes to what's going on in Germany and Europe. It's actually pretty irrelevant for Bitcoin because the crucial things are happening here, in the US for sure. And there's Trump as well, a player who can really pump the markets up or down. He himself said that it can definitely be painful here, that it can go down first. Now we have Steve Cohen here, who also says he's been very bearish for a long time, but not so bearish that he's saying, here comes the ultimate apocalypse or anything like that. There will be corrections, and these corrections are often buying opportunities. And you just have to watch, because there is always the debate, okay, will Bitcoin make it through this bull run without a recession? Or will the recession slow down the bull run? And we still don't know how this story is going to end. A lot of people assume, okay, we're still going to ride this bull run all the way. We're now heading into the parabolic phase. That was just a little fake out that will correct back up. Then we'll see new all-time highs, and after Bitcoin makes its move, then we head into the recession. And now CZ actually made a very, very interesting prediction that we definitely need to keep a close eye on. CZ has actually predicted things in the Bitcoin or crypto market several times before. And a lot of people think he has insider information, even when crashes are looming, that he knows exactly when the manipulations happen and when they don't. Others say, okay, he just has a good feel for the market. Some people also say, for example, about FTX. And so he had insider information because he predicted that in advance. For example, he also predicted that about the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Fund at the men's conference. And now we actually see an old prediction from him, and he's quoting it all again and topping the prediction. He did it here on 17. In December 2020, he said, I'm waiting for the day when Bitcoin crashes from $101,000 down to $85,000. And what have we seen now? A crash from $101,000 down to $85,000. And now CZ is saying, he's topping it all off because the prediction has now come true. Now he's saying, I'm waiting for the day and the headline when Bitcoin crashes from $1,001,000 down to $985,000. And back then, yeah, in 2020, it took 4 years for that prediction to come true. And now we could assume that by 2028, if this holds true again, that's when we'll break the million mark. That's definitely ultra bullish, and that's exactly what I want to share with you. Yeah, in the short term, it's always turbulent. You never know if it's going up or down, anything can happen. In the medium term, we can also say that we need to wait for the next 1 or 2 days, maybe even the next 1 or 2 weeks, to see how things develop, whether the sentiment repeats itself. It can also go back up very, very quickly, but if it doesn't recover, and if the fears of recession really start to hit hard. And if there really is a recession or something like that, then it is also medium-term bearish. But long-term, it's ultra bullish, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about the medium-term too. So, in the end, it can go up or it can go down. I can't really say more about that. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. Here you can get up to 20% off with the code on the fees when buying Bitcoin. I'm going to show you what El Salvador looks like at night. You can hardly see anything because there are relatively few lights here. That's the cool part here. But here, there's still an awesome starry sky. Let's see if we can see anything on the camera. I don't think you can see anything at all. Okay, that didn't work. So guys, see you later. Peace out.